All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Fist Dented Christians. Dustin and DJ here. It's been a few weeks since it's just been the two of us, and for those watching at a later date, this is Christmas time of 2019. So we're just going to do a quick catch up on some of the things we've been struggling with the last few weeks, and then we're going to kind of look ahead to what each of us want to accomplish in the new year for 2020, and then maybe where we want to take this podcast. So I'll kick it off because I had the talk with our buddy Eddie a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And on there, I let you guys know that I was still struggling with the going to prostitutes, and that's still a struggle. Overeating is still a struggle, and to kind of help that, I went to my doctor maybe a few weeks ago and upped one of my meds and added another one, a mood stabilizer. So those seem to have stabilized and kept my thoughts from going super negative. So it's one thing that I really like to push is, get the help you need. Don't let other people, if somebody tells you, oh, I don't believe in medication or therapies for babies, then they've never been through it, or what they went through wasn't what you're going through, so they don't have a right to speak into your life to tell you to not do something. So yeah, I think I'll let DJ kind of take over now because he and I were talking about some things, and he in particular had something he was kind of struggling with this week. So DJ.
Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas.
to you and
Yep.
to all of our listeners. And so it's been a few weeks since I've been able to kind of be on the show, and it's just been a busy time of year. I decided to buy a new house during the holidays, and so I would never recommend anybody buy a new house over the holidays because there's this thing it's called festive stress. So there's a poll that was done that that interviewed 2,000 people, and of those 2,000 people, 76% of them identified as what's called festive stress, which is basically a heightened sense of anxiety and even sometimes depression as a result of the holidays. And that could be, financial relationships, the in-laws or your parents or family dynamics and stuff that are coming. And so a lot of people, that added pressure that Christmas sometimes unfortunately tends to bring. And so never buy a house over the holidays because you're just sort of adding to the pool. So I think I'm a glutton for punishment. But it's been a good, busy few weeks. It's been a great summer. I've been so happy and grateful and blessed to be a part of this podcast as we kind of share life together and share our struggles together. And I was required to fly out to California for work. That's why I missed a couple weeks. And it was interesting being out in LA and seeing the brokenness, just right in front of your face. It's a weird place. Los Angeles is a strange place. Number one, it's massive. And we ended up having an Airbnb downtown LA. And we were, Airbnb was gorgeous inside, but, as soon as we stepped out on the sidewalks, we saw lots of homeless and drug-addled and feces and urine and mental health issues were very apparent. And it's just, it really drove home the fact that the world is broken. And just because you may be driving a new Tesla or living in a box on the street, I think that brokenness it doesn't discriminate. And I think everybody feels it to some degree or another. And your willingness to sort of accept that and address it and try to work on solutions to feel more connected and to feel hope and to feel contentment, all of those things I think are pretty primal needs as a human being. And so it was very stark. It was a very contrasting kind of experience for me, and I'm glad that I had it. And it just brought me home thinking about these things and thinking about myself, and before we started our show today, Dustin and I like to catch up with each other and just kind of check in and see how things are going, what's going on. Some of this is just kind of house cleaning stuff, and some of it's just more vulnerable. But generally, there's always a theme that we kind of resonate with before we start talking. Sometimes that theme kind of pops up 2 or 3 days before. Sometimes it just pops up, right before we press record. And today it was the latter. It was right before we press record, and I was looking at my laptop and I was telling about some of my experiences this week, and I looked up the definition of codependent, and and it sort of hit me between the eyes, and I like try to I admit that I'm an alcoholic, but I guess I have a harder time admitting that I'm codependent, and that is somebody who is emotionally or psychologically reliant on others, and that kind of that sort of encapsulates me, and for some reason. I'm a little bit more ashamed of that than I am that I'm an alcoholic, and I don't know why that is, and it just makes me feel there's something there that just triggers me in a real deep primal way, and I don't know why that is, and I think that that's probably because I don't know enough about where it comes from, or maybe I do, and it definitely impacts my relationships. It impacts my ability to feel good about who I am and my self-esteem. And most people, if you knew me personally, just you would probably be like, "Oh, you don't have any issues, and you seem like you always got your stuff together." And which was actually verbatim what somebody said to me before a training I did last month at a work thing. I was getting set up, and I asked for some tea, some chamomile tea, because I always get kind of anxious and panicky before I have to talk to a group of people. And it's been going on for years. It's very strange that that would happen to me, because I've been speaking to groups large and small for many, many years. But every time before, I just get very, very scared. I would say it's probably just fear. And so when I mentioned that to my contact, who I know pretty well through a work relationship, she was like, "Oh, really? Like, I don't understand. You always seem like you have it so together." And I don't have it all together. And what we put out to the world sometimes, I think, is kind of what we want them to see, or what maybe we think we should be doing, or acting, or behaving, or saying. And I would say that there's probably only one person, it would be my girlfriend, that kind of knows the real DJ, and can kind of see right through it. Unfortunately, she's the same one that kind of gets the brunt of all my codependent stuff, and and I can see it happening. Something will be said, or something won't be said, or something will be done or not done, and it just triggers me, and I automatically kind of digress into this little scared kid who is just scrambling to protect himself from being hurt, or being lied to, or I don't know what the word is, just being maybe just somebody not being honest with themselves with me. And the scary thing about that is that when you kind of let the codependent monster out to play, it just drives people away. And then so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that what you didn't want to have happen ends up happening because of your own actions. And it's just really hard. And you tend to get these narratives in your head, and Dustin and I were talking about expectations, and how people sometimes end up putting you into a position where you just have to be accepting, and so it's just been really hard. And honestly, I've been finding myself really trying to practice not caring, and that's just not who I am. It's not who I'm wired. And then I start to doubt myself about, well, am I not caring because I don't want to be hurt, or am I not caring because it's authentic? And then you get into this own kind of cycle in your head that it just doesn't stop. And sometimes for those of you that maybe don't know or haven't heard, is I'm a single dad, so I only have my daughter half the time, and so when I do have my daughter, Katie, who's a teenager, she is she's helpful because I get to focus on her. Obviously more codependent stuff. And but when she's not with me, I end up trying to figure out. I'm lonely. I end up reaching out to. I probably don't reach out as much as I should. I reach out to my relationship, and but at the same time, I'm trying to be middle-aged person trying to find myself, and it's been kind of hard to do that, and it's been difficult to just accept some of the things about myself, and I don't necessarily know how to change them. So I don't know. I guess that's my update. There was a thing on my laptop here that I saw when Dustin was doing his intro that kind of hit me pretty hard. It's just one sentence. It says, the key to repairing and ending codependency is to start protecting and nurturing ourselves. I don't know how to do that. And I don't know what nurturing myself means. And I don't know, what protecting myself means. Like, how does that start? How do you do it? And I don't want to say that I'm miserable. I'm not. I'm doing okay. But I just sometimes, and maybe other people listening can relate to this, is sometimes you just feel like you just need to be hugged all the time. And as a middle-aged man who has kind of a leadership position and that everybody kind of thinks has a shit together, that's hard to kind of like bear that out, and it's hard to admit it, because you're kind of looked at as this person that's supposed to have it all together all the time, and I don't have it all together, and it's difficult. It's difficult. So that's why I do this podcast. Is because I know that there's other people out there who may hear something that I say or that Dustin says that resonates, and we want to try to come together. That's why I go to my meetings with my doctors and dentists every month, and that's why I try to go to church. So the funny thing is with church is you don't ever see this stuff. You don't ever see these conversations aren't happening, and even in some of the small groups, I don't ever think that I've never felt it, and so it's very lonely, and you struggle when you are isolated, and I feel like that's part of kind of the evil in the world is that we don't want to bother people with how we're feeling, and so we don't talk to people about it, and so. I don't know. This is probably more than I ever expected to say today, but I guess maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that it came out. I just needed to bring it up.
Well, thanks for sharing, DJ, and I'll certainly let you know that I certainly deal with a lot of the same issues. I'm not codependent right now because I don't have anybody to be codependent with, but I'm fairly certain if I did, I would be. And I think I'm pretty sure that's a lot of reason for me going to strippers and prostitutes. It's if I pay them, then I have their time and their attention, and I don't have to worry about them choosing me. They're not choosing me. It's a business transaction, and it scares the shit out of me to think that some woman would choose me, and I know that if I were to be in a relationship right now, I would need just constant validation, and that's not fair to somebody. So, and then I struggle with that too. Like, I really want to be in a relationship because I'm at my best when I'm helping other people and when I get to be involved in their lives and support them and care about them. And I know that right now I'm just not healthy enough mentally to be in a healthy relationship. So I break down and pay money for strippers or prostitutes. And so it's a really hard place to be in, where you're either dealing with codependency issues or trying to avoid codependency issues like me. And yeah, what the hell do you do with it? I think you keep plugging away and you find something that'll work. I'm a big proponent that something has to work. You just got to find it. So you just got to keep trying. And that doesn't mean you have to try every day. Some days you're going to not feel like trying. Some days you're just going to, watch TV and veg out, or you're going to indulge in something you shouldn't. But, when you're done with that, the next hour, the next day, you get up and you try something else. I know for me, peaks and valleys with mental health. For me, coming up in the next year, I'm going to try and do some things to get set for eating better and all that. I'm kind of coming out of a valley right now. Like I mentioned earlier, I got on a new med and upped one med, so I'm going to have my dad come over and help set up my bedroom a little bit better to make it more conducive to healthier eating. I'm going to work with a buddy starting another podcast. This podcast is great for emotional things that I need, but I also want like intellectual things. So this next podcast I'm starting is going to be more on the intellectual side. And my hope is that if I can start eating a little bit better this coming year, at least starting out, and I can get this podcast going, now all of a sudden I've got a podcast that I can deal with the emotional side of myself. I have a podcast that challenges the intellectual side of myself. I'm eating better. Maybe I'm making some better steps. And then who knows, 6 months or a year down the road, if I stick with it, maybe I am healthy enough to have a girlfriend. And then I've built some tools on my own already that if I am in a relationship, I don't need that constant validation. I've already started my path of validating myself. So I think, maybe this podcast could help you, or maybe when you're dealing with codependent issues, think about all the things that you do that benefit people that you just do yourself, or you don't need somebody else to do them. You're just like, okay, I take care of my daughter. I'm good at that. And that has nothing to do with her. It's all a choice of mine. She doesn't need to motivate me to take care of her. I love her, and I'm driven to take care of her. And every day I get up and I go to my job and I do a good job there, and that's just because I believe in doing a good job or whatever it is. So hopefully you can find some stuff just to keep trying.
Yeah.
Eventually something sticks.
Yeah. So thank you, Dustin. And by the way, folks, guess who picked me up at the airport at midnight when I flew back from LA? And that's actually kind of an interesting thing, because I didn't expect that. And because in some weird part of my mind, like, Dustin's not a good enough friend that he would come and pick me up at the airport.
Yeah.
And that's part of my problem is that I don't have that perception about myself enough that, oh, Dustin cares enough about DJ that he would come and pick him up from the airport, 7 below, and it's midnight. And sure enough, Dustin's like, I'll be there. And, man, that's just awesome. It's just awesome. So it's interesting, because I think that when we keep doing the next right thing, and I love what you said about just every day, just keep at it, try something new.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's not enough just to not drink, right?
Sure.
You have to, now that you're not drinking, or now that you're not using or smoking or snorting or shooting or blah blah blah, that then comes actually the real work.
Mm-hmm.
And the real work, I think, is repairing yourself and repairing who you are. And as I was listening to talk, it's making me think, like, and maybe you, I don't want to speak for you, have a really shitty view of myself.
Oh, yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah.
And the word I was looking for earlier was deceived. Like, I'm always worried that I'm going to be deceived, and I can't expect everybody to be completely 100% honest with me all the time. That's just not how everybody is. But I do have, boundaries in my life with certain people that I care about, that I am going to give you the same amount as I'm going to give myself, because I don't want to feel deceived. But trying every day, and let's just say that you are deceived. Well, that's not your fault.
Right.
And so some of this stuff is just being screwed up when we were young. We didn't get something when we were young, or we got messed over or messed up when we were young, and so we just deal with situations differently. And anybody that knows my story, they know that I was pretty screwed up at a pretty young age with a lot of things that are showing up now in middle age.
Yeah.
And that's my responsibility to fix, and I haven't been fixing. I just go about my day, and the reality is I probably would be a happier person, probably a better person, if I was actually focusing on this.
Yeah.
And just accept it. You are this.
Yeah.
You are this. You have this malady, and you need to take concrete, tangible steps to fix it. And it doesn't need to be for anybody else. It just needs to be for you. Talking about into next year, I wrote a novel. I have a novel written. Do you think that I think it has any chance of being published? I don't.
Right.
But anybody who's read it says, "Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. This is going to be on a bookshelf." Yeah. And I just can't bring myself to believe that that's ever going to effing happen. And why? What's wrong with that? Like, I should be my own. I should be sending out, and that's my goal for next year, is to really, and now that we're talking, this is very strange, because now, like, my thinking has changed. Like, if I'm going to ever be successful in the way that I want to be successful, then I need to change some very, very, very core beliefs about myself.
Yeah.
It's not about having the energy or the discipline to send out letters and finding an agent and all this crap. It's about the fact that you believe in yourself enough, whether it's with your novel to be published, whether it's finding a girlfriend, whether it's doing another podcast, whether it's starting your own business or doing consulting on the side. It doesn't matter. But if you don't believe in yourself first, it's never going to catch root.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I believe in myself and my job or your job.
Right.
You just go to your job and do your job.
Yeah.
So it doesn't ever give you a platform or an environment to really focus on you.
Sure.
Like, what does Dustin stand for? What is like Dustin is or DJ? Like, you can do this job, but it's not necessarily what you're meant to do. If you're really, really, really believed in yourself, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now.
Right.
And that maybe applies for other people too. I can already think of 3 or 4 other people just in my head right now that if they truly believed in themselves and their abilities, and they wouldn't be doing the jobs they're doing. They would be actually living fully animated.
Yeah.
And so this is actually this show has been pretty cathartic for me, because I didn't expect it. But do you agree? Do you did some of the stuff?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's I hate the cliche of have a positive mental attitude, because I think it's too simplistic, and it's not easy to just go, oh, I'm really depressed, so I'm just going to think better, and then I won't be. But it obviously is important, so you have to, how do you bridge that gap? And again, it goes back to, I'm a big proponent of try something. try something. If try A, B, C, D all the way through Z. If none of those work, try A again or try F again. Just keep trying something. Something will stick eventually. And that's a really hard thing for me to kind of put out into the world, because I know when I'm super depressed, I get really negative and I think, well, there's nothing written in the cosmos that says I or anybody else gets to figure this out. And so when I'm super depressed and somebody says something will work, I just come back with, well, you don't really know that. You don't know that. There's nothing, whatever you believe in. I believe in the God of the Bible. God doesn't tell us anywhere in the Bible that we're eventually going to lead happy lives. So, I say something will work out, not as a flippant, oh, it'll be fine type thing. I say it as, with my medications working and building some momentum, I do genuinely believe that we can all find something, and you just have to keep trying. And if you can't try, get some people in your life that can support you in that, not in a codependent way, but we all need other people to a certain extent. And for people listening that maybe don't struggle, if you have the mental energy for it, look for somebody in your life that you think is way under their potential, and maybe just start to poke at them and ask them questions. What would you do? What do you think your strengths are? Here's what I think your strengths are. I've never heard anybody complaining that, oh, too many people are nice to me and tell me what I'm good at. So I think for yourself, if you're struggling, find some ways to affirm what you're good at, because everybody's good at least one thing, and you genuinely are good at least one thing. And for people that aren't struggling, if you see somebody in your life that is struggling, let them know what they're good at. Give them some positive reinforcement. And again, that isn't just feel better, because I get it. Like I said, I've been in some dark places where people say that, and I just go so negative and think, well, you're just saying that because you're a good person and you don't want me to kill myself, or you don't want me to go visit a prostitute again. So I get that side of it too, where if somebody's being positive with you, it's really easy to go negative and assume ulterior motives, that they're just trying to keep you from doing something drastic, but they don't really believe it. But if you find people that are honest with you, you can believe it, because then they're going to challenge you on things that you're doing wrong. So they don't have an issue going, hey, this is something you need to look at, but you're really good at this. Well, now I know they're honest with me, so I can trust when they say I'm good at this. So you just, everybody's working together, finding what they're good at, letting other people help them discover what they're good at. And the psychologists that I've been to, other friends or family that have seen psychologists, a common theme is just building momentum. Just get some positive things going that you can build off of. And I liked what you said about building on not drinking. Like, there's a certain point when you get sober, a short period or medium period, whatever it is, where your only job is to not drink. But once you've got that somewhat down, then you got to build on that. You can't just stand pat at, well, every day is a success as long as I don't drink. I could sit at home and watch TV and talk to nobody. Well, that's not a success at a certain point. Your first few days, maybe that is a success, and awesome, and celebrate that. That's a big thing too, is celebrate what is a genuine win. But I liked what you said about, okay, it's not just my job to not drink anymore. Now I have to do some other things to keep going and build on that.
Keep talking, because I wrote something down. I want to go grab it. I wrote it on a piece of scrap paper that kind of goes with what we're saying here.
Okay.
So you still have it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, because I've talked about in the past on some of these podcasts, if making your bed is a win, then celebrate that win. So make sure that you're defining truly what is a win, and then you're building on that as well. So even somebody that's codependent, you don't have to break the codependency right away. It's like if I text my significant other 15 times a day looking for validation, if I set a goal of only 8 times a day, and that's a genuine struggle, and you genuinely achieve that, then that's a win. And then you get it down to once a day, and then you build it into an actual healthy relationship where it isn't codependent, but you're still obviously relying on the other person for some emotional needs, but it's not in a codependent way. And I think a lot of that too, I've got some family or friends that struggle with some things and are starting therapy, and it's been a long time that they've needed to. One person in particular that I know, she started therapy recently, and it's opened up her eyes to a lot of things she didn't realize were an issue that some of us that were close to her did realize. And so luckily for her, she trusted us enough to be caring and honest, and we had suggested therapy for a while, and she finally took that leap. And turns out that, yeah, it's going to be a really hard road, and it's going to be a long process, but she's already seeing some benefits, and she can move forward and build off of those, and trust that some people that are very close to her will support her no matter what, and will work with her to make sure that we're keeping her on track and honest, but we're also being supportive and giving her the room she needs to grow.
I love it. And I feel like, and I wrote this down, and I was going to throw it away a couple times. It's super simple, and I hope it doesn't sound like a cliche, but I'd like to walk. I end up getting most of my best ideas either early in the morning, late at night, or when I'm walking.
Okay.
And so I've been thinking about kind of all of this stuff, this podcast, and going to work, and buying a new home, and being codependent, and being an alcoholic, and just whatever. And so I'm thinking, in this deeper kinds of thinking is, what is the purpose of life? Like, what is it? Why are we here? And my first thought was, because, God wants us to be happy. And it's like, well, no, that's the purpose of life isn't to be happy. Because, right. And then it hit me when I was walking in the middle of nowhere that the purpose of life is growth. And sure. What we're talking about is, the purpose of this podcast is to recognize not only our messiness and our brokenness, but it's to grow. Everything that we do, everywhere you look, there's growth. It could be a tree, it could be a little child, it could be a puppy into a dog. Everything is, everything is designed to grow. And I think as human beings, you keep saying this, try something. That's probably what we should call this podcast, is try something.
Yeah.
But you've said it a few times in the last half hour, and I feel like that's the fuel for growth, is that try something. And then, so the purpose of life is growth. And then underneath I scribbled out, fear is the byproduct of being stagnant. And that's true for me.
Okay.
For me. And I'm not saying that this applies to everybody.
Yeah.
But fear is the byproduct of not doing anything.
Sure.
So like you said, just, okay, I didn't drink for 3 days, or I didn't drink for 5 years, but I'm still on the couch all day doing nothing. It's because so I'm stagnant.
Yeah.
And so now I'm afraid that, so then I get in my own head, right? Or I'm not working on finding an agent, or I'm not working on my own website.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, I start to get fearful, like, well, you're not doing it because you can't do it. And so again, it's that cycle of perpetual kind of thought patterns that I feel like go against. So if the purpose is for us to grow, not just physically, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about spiritually and emotionally, intelligently, intellectually. If we're not feeding that, then we're not living our true purpose.
Right.
So, anyhow.
All
right, why don't we... Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to stop. I like titling the podcast, or titling this episode as Try Something. DJ, I really appreciate how open you were about the codependency stuff and all that. That's a really hard thing, and it is weird how you get okay with some of your struggles and you're not okay with other struggles. And it's that's probably a topic for another podcast, is why am I okay with this struggle but I'm embarrassed by this struggle. So I'll just close in a quick prayer.
Please.
And we'll wrap it up. So Lord, we thank you for giving us the time and opportunity to meet and do this podcast. We thank you for having an outlet to be honest with each other and with other people. And we pray that our honesty can help those in need. We pray that anybody out there who is struggling and feels embarrassed, just let them know that, they can listen to our struggles and know that they're not alone. And we ask that you be with them and that you bless them with the tools to get themselves better. Amen.
Amen.